Okay, so we're going to talk about the Burroughs Moon-Hopkins machine. A machine which has been more of an architectural feature in my workshop than an actual calculating machine. But as you can see, it looks like a typewriter on the front. That is to say, it has a typewriter keyboard, and then in front of the typewriter keyboard you have some keys that operate the calculating machine. And then it's an understrike typewriter, so that means that you have to lift the carriage to see what you're typing. And then if you look inside here, you will see that there are, if we move the ribbon out of the way for a bit, you will see that there are typing bars for the calculating machine, as well as typing bars for the typewriter that appear on this side of the type bars for the calculator, so they essentially they type in the next position. Of course, the machine has all features that you would expect for a typewriter. So that means there is a carriage with tab stops, there is a margin control and an extra margin control after using the margin release, and then there are these two tripping blocks which we'll get to in a minute. Line spacing, carriage return, all these things. So the typewriter has a backspace key, it has a carriage return which is electric. There's the usual shift lock, margin release, ribbon shift, things like that. And then at the back of the typewriter, which remained an understrike typewriter until the 1950s when they stopped making this machine, because of course the architecture of the calculating machine only allows understrike typing, so there was no way to make the calculating machine print visibly. And so if we move the machine a bit to the front, we can get to the calculator that is built on the back of the typewriter over here. And essentially these are probably about 3 or 4 calculating machines. So I'll start by explaining the architecture of the machine a bit. It's based on a simple adding machine, a printing adding machine, with type bars not going vertically onto the front of a roll of paper, but horizontally into the underside of the carriage. And the way that the various calculating machines that are in here are connected is via these bars over here. So these bars run the entire length of the machine all the way up front and terminate in the type bars under the platen over here. Along the way they meet various elements, and so the first one that is immediately visible if you look down here is the register. And so you can see the gear wheels over here of the register. And the reason you can see the gear wheels is of course because the register is movable. It is a trip register, and what you can thus do is to move the register into various positions, namely position 1, position 2 and position 3. So there are actually 3 registers at the front of the machine, which you can, for a certain orientation of the carriage, which you can choose to engage with the type bars and the rest of the calculating mechanism. So you have a choice of 3 registers. Then there is another register back here, the rear register, and that is always in line with the rest of the calculating machine. So it can be used for accumulating totals. It can also be used for multiplications. And so that is the last thing that this machine does. It is multiplying, and for that reason there is a multiplier back here. This entire part of the machine back here is in fact a multiplier, and we'll get back to that in a minute, how that works. But so what happens is that, and I have to turn things a little to be able to look inside. What happens is that the keys at the front of the typewriter operate the calculating machine. And so the first thing that we can look at is this pin cushion over here. And you see these bars at the back here, they are essentially connected to the keys at the front of the typewriter. So if I push a key, you see one of these bars come up and actually push in one of the cushions in that plate, and as soon as you release, the cushion shifts, and so you can set various numbers in the machine. Then as soon as you operate it, these teeth, I don't know if that is going to be visible, but all the way down here you can see that they connect to another pin cushion that pushes a certain number of pins up. So what happens next is, if you operate the machine, so then we need to push the motor bar. There we go. What we see happening then is that the crank for the machine is operated, and it pushes this pin cushion up into contact with the other pins up there, and then the bars are actually pushed forward. So you see these toothed bars inside the machine, which I for some reason cannot get sharp. But you see that you can actually see it in the back here. You can actually see them moving forward, and they are being stopped by these pins that stick out to the top, because there is a kind of geared sector there's a kind of gear sector over there, and so then at some point the hammers will strike the type bars. So if we lift the carriage here, you can actually see that the number that I entered, these type bars are sticking out to the front, and so at some point there is a set of small hammers down there, which you see all the way at the front of the image, that strike upwards, and these type slugs, they are actually sitting loose in that bar, and so they are struck up against the platen. And then when that is done, the smart thing happens, because all we have done until now is print the number that we set into the machine. But then interesting things start to happen, because if you remember, I told you these bars at the back that you see, they run all the way through the machine, and they have toothed sectors. And so what will happen when you press the motor bar after entering a number is that as the type bars run back, that they will actually engage down here. They will engage with the register, and I don't know if I can somehow show that. Maybe I can if I do it like this. Yeah, not really. The type bars will engage with the register when running backwards, and in that way enter There we go. Actually, you hear the gears clicking, and then the register is disengaged from the bars. So the register is organized in such a way that when the bars run backwards, it can add numbers into the register. And you can see that there's a tens carry mechanism at the top here, as well as for the rear register at the top there. And so you can keep adding numbers, and the tens carries will happen in the way that they should happen. But the register only runs in one direction. And so this is the genius of the machine. You enter a number when the bar runs backwards. But if you run the bar forward, there is actually a hard stop when the register reaches 0. And so what happens is, if you bring, so you can see that these registers can be brought up and down. There you go. So if the machine brings the register down, it is engaged with the bars that run front to back. If you release these bars and push them forward, they will go forward until that particular numeral gear in the register reaches 0, and then stop. So you can put numbers into the register by entering them into the keyboard, and then you can also read them out and print them. And you can do that with the front register, with one of the 3 front registers, whatever front register you put into engagement with the type bars, you can read out. So you can add several numbers into a register and then read them out. You can also read out the rear register. And the interesting thing is that you always read registers when the bars are moving forward, but you enter numbers in the register when the bars are moving backwards. So what you could also do by operating these levers that you have here at the side to bring the rear register into engagement and the front register into engagement, by using the right timing, you can also read out the number in one of the front registers, print it, and then disengage the front register, engage the rear register, and run the type bars back and enter that number into the rear register. Or the other way around, you can read the rear register and enter the number into the front register. So what you can do is enter numbers simply by pressing the keys and the motor bar into the active front register, or by using one of the several operation knobs that the machine has. You can use a particularly timed combination of bringing the rear and the front register down in order to read a number, add a number, print a number, or transfer a number. And so what you can also do is take a number out of one front register, put it in the rear register, then retransfer it to the front register. So you can transfer numbers around between the registers as well as adding them and printing them.